Well,
Yeah.
welcome so much, Bobbie. Thank you for joining us this evening. You mentioned you wanted to open with a few passages from The Ones We Keep.
I would.
Yes, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. Okay. Shall I do it now?
Yes, feel free.
The first passage was actually part of the prologue, but I use it at the end of the book as well, where I extend it. I think I won't explain the plot. I think probably most of you know the plot. So anyway, it's threatening rain, but she never minds about the weather. Mostly she walks just before dinner, but today, because Alex is bringing his daughter for her lesson, Olivia decides to go earlier. Grabbing an umbrella, she lets herself out of the door and sets off as she usually does, walking, faster and faster. I have 3 children, she says out loud. 3 children. She repeats the phrase over and over, the beat taken up by her feet pounding the hard earth. 1, 2, 3. The woods are silent, as they often are on hot summer afternoons. All she can hear are her footsteps and the murmur of waves lapping against the rocky shore. She rounds one bend, then another, until the path narrows and she reaches the bend, where she stops, gazing across the lake to the resort on the opposite shore. Today, there's no one in sight. The rumble of thunder that began when she left home is getting louder. A bird along the shoreline gives a plaintive cry. Olivia doesn't linger. She never stays long. It's enough that she comes every day, as she has for years. It's enough. After a final look at the deserted dock, the motionless trees and dark water, she turns back. At home, she pours herself a glass of water and takes it across to the cemetery behind the church next door. When she reaches the marker of the 7 ward children, she sets her glass on the grass and sits with her back against the stone, watching as bolts of lightning streak the sky. It begins to rain. Sometimes when she sits here, Olivia thinks that Mary Ward was the luckier woman. She lies over by the fence, carried away 17 months after burying the last of her children. The insertion of a mosquito's proboscis into her flesh had taken her. Ague, her stone reads, and beneath that, she delighted in the Lord. Here in the graveyard, Mary's children are more real to Olivia than her own 3. It seems that proximity is everything. She can almost see Mabel in her white lawn dress, playing with a lump of dough while her mother rolls out a pie crust. She can hear the twins, John and Ezra, as they careen down a snow-covered embankment, shrieking as their sled picks up momentum until it's virtually flying through the thin, cold air. And she can imagine in their turn Francis and Tom and Matthew and baby Nancy scattering chicken feed in the pen beside the barn, or after a hot summer's day, dancing barefoot in the rain. Occasionally in the night, she's awakened by a giggle or a scream, or by someone calling out, "Mommy." It used to distress her. Now she just smiles. She doesn't know whether it's Brian or Andrew or Rory or one of the wards. Perhaps it's none of them. Perhaps it's some other child, a lost child or a former child, a present child or a future one. Because the call is never repeated, she believes that the child, whoever it is, has found its way home. Or she assumes that it has. There's no proof one way or another. The lightning flashes again and the spatter becomes a deluge. I have 3 children, Olivia says, as she walks back to the house through the pouring rain. So that's one section. And I have another couple of smaller ones, if I can, let's see.
Sure. For those just joining us, thank you so much for speaking to Bobbie Jean Huff this evening, the author of The Ones We Keep. And Bobbie, would you like to continue with other passages?
A couple of other smaller ones, I promise.
No worries, take your time.
Andrew sat on the lower bunk, twirling his purple blanket between his thumb and forefinger. Brian climbed the ladder to the top bunk and, lying flat, stared up at the ceiling, which, like the rest of the cabin, was made of unfinished wooden boards. A little black spider was crawling across one of those boards. Brian gritted his teeth and tried unsuccessfully to think about chocolate-covered marshmallows. Instead, he thought about the spider. What was to stop it, only inches from his head, from letting out its silken cord and dropping onto his face? He shut his eyes tight so he wouldn't have to see it. After a long while, he fell asleep. When he woke, it was to the sound of the bedroom door being thrown open. Carla came into the room, and behind her was the boy from the little farm, the pony boy. He was scowling. "Where's Andrew?" Carla asked. And then last one. Okay. And again, we're in Brian's mind as he tries to understand how easily things could have gone another way. Every time Brian thinks of it, he's aware that things might have turned out differently if he hadn't fallen asleep that day, and that he wouldn't have fallen asleep if he hadn't closed his eyes, and that he wouldn't have closed his eyes if it hadn't been for that spider. He would have read his book instead, the one he'd brought with him to the resort, the one his mother had given to him about the children who went through the wardrobe and ended up in a magical kingdom. Whatever the answers to his questions are, he knows he can't change a thing, can't go back and make things right. But maybe he'll at least be able to understand what it was that happened that day, which means he just might be able to stop lying awake every night wondering how it was that in the space of 5 short hours on a beautiful sunny summer day in Vermont, surrounded by every person in the world he loved and who loved him, his whole world could so thoroughly be smashed to pieces. That's it.
Thank you.
If you want to hear the rest of it, you'll have to go buy it.
That was beautiful, Bobbie Jean. Now, as I told our audience, we learned that you had a what if moment when you were vacationing with your family in Vermont. How do you go from that what if moment? Where do you go from there to heading to writing a book? Like, what was your next step once you had that what if question?
Well, that what if happened when we were vacationing at a resort with our 3 boys. And I went on a hike one day, and as I came back, I saw through the woods the dock and the children playing, and I thought to myself, what if I heard that one of them had died, but I didn't know which one? And I thought to myself, I might walk out of my life. So that became a story, and the story was Proximity. And I submitted it at a number of places, including the New Yorker, who told me that it was too long. And I put it away, very upset. How could I be rejected by the New Yorker, not knowing how hard it was to get in? Immediately I thought they would take me, right? I put it away for probably 10 years. And then my husband said, so they said it was too long. Why don't you make it into a novel? So that's what I did. I became 70 years old, and I started thinking, I promised myself, I'd always promised myself that I would write a novel. So at 70, I thought maybe it's time to at least start thinking about it. So that's what I did.
Now, what did your family think about this idea you had? What was the reaction from, because they
all thought it was kind of gruesome, a little gruesome.
Yes.
I was always intrigued by the idea of somebody walking out of their life. The witness protection program, or even during 9/11, I thought, when it had happened, I thought, I wonder if there were some people who, instead of going home, walked out of their lives, and they would have been thought missing. It was kind of intriguing. So that's what I did. That was my premise. And it took me a couple of years, probably 3. And there I had it. That was my first novel at the age of, well, I finished it when I was 74, and I'm 76 now.
Wow.
So, yeah.
It's never too late. Never too late.
I guess not.
Now you had been writing before that, right? This is your first novel, but before you had written.
I had written poems and short stories and amusing essays for the newspaper in Toronto. So I always wrote as an adult, but the novel eluded me until old age.
And what's the secret, you think, to the longer form?
What's the secret? Well,
from jumping to that shorter form to something longer.
The whole curve of it, the way it goes, it's just totally different. I had several goes at it, actually, even before I was 70, and I had to throw it away. It was junk. And I didn't see that it was visually, it goes like this, like this. The ending is kind of like a curve, much different than a short story. Short stories I found easy. I never thought I would have the perseverance for the novel. And several times I didn't. But then I kind of got into the knack of it, and I started to understand how you write a novel. You know what you want to convey if you do. I knew the beginning and I knew the end. And each scene I would think, okay, well, what do I want to convey with this scene? And then I would make it up, whatever it is, and I would convey it. And like Olivia, Olivia, when she walks to the bus when she's broken and she knows one of her children had died, I needed to convey it in short, broken, she was broken in short, broken bits of dialogue and insane bits of dialogue that people she would meet on the way to the bus station walking out of her life. I think I taught myself how to do this, really, how to write a novel, just by reading novels. You know.
Now, I thought your format was very compelling. I don't know how many people here have read the book yet. I don't want to give too much away, but the beginning was very difficult because of going through what Olivia was going through. And then you had time pass.
Yes.
Like through stages. So you'd be reading and then another 10 years would pass. And then you'd be reading and through a section, another 10 years would pass.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about the process, your decision to write in this format? And
it's not as if I sat down and thought I'm going to write in this format. It sort of just happened like that. I've always admired short story collections that are thought of as novels, connected short stories. And I was sort of trying for that because I love that way of writing, but I couldn't do it because the curves weren't right. Each chapter wasn't a short story, but I wanted there to be space in between the chapters, time and space. I wanted to put in the interesting things and leave the boring bits out, and have people guess what the process was of having my characters go from here to here to here. So that's what I did. My second novel that I've just submitted to my agent isn't that format at all. It's much more traditional. And my third, which I've also just about to give her, is totally different as well, format-wise. Wow. It's what it needed, actually. It's a little bit weird, but anyway.
That's interesting. Is it getting faster? Is your writing getting faster, you feel? Or are you getting like the...
No, I don't think it's getting faster. It's a slog.
What was the most difficult part for you to write in The Ones We Keep? What is the hardest?
I think the hardest thing was doing the last scene. I'm not going to tell you what the last scene was because I'm sure a lot of people haven't read it yet. Suffice it to say that I cried for 3 days, maybe 4, while I was writing it.
Oh. I'm sure you get this question a lot, but do you have a lot of inspiration? Like, are these characters inspired by a lot of people in your life, or are they pulled out of thin air? Are they just pastiches of different characters, or?
I think they're totally new characters. Yeah, I haven't taken any from real life. Well, probably dialogue, but they're not me and they're not my family. Even though some of my sons see themselves in them, my sons are wrong. Sorry, sons, if you're out there.
Oh my goodness. So Joyce has a question.
I liked research.
Oh yes, yes. We can.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, we can loop back to that about your research process. Joyce does have a question. It's related, I think, is whether you write every day.
Oh, write or do something around writing. Like today, my Canadian editor sent me a new magazine in Canada called Syndication Lit, and it has to do with music and essays and fiction and poetry. And she wanted me to submit some of my poetry that hadn't been published. So I picked out the ones with musical references, and I spent a long time revamping my poetry today. So, I mean, I'm not always writing novels, right? So I did the poetry. Last week, my agent asked me to write an essay for a woman's magazine. So that took me several days.
Oh.
But what I'm doing next, and I'll be starting it tomorrow, actually, my agent and my publisher are all pushing me for the sequel, because a lot of the people who read the book say, what happened next? What happened? You got to tell us. And I'd like to do that. And a couple of years ago, I started writing the sequel after I finished, the first part of it. And I outlined it, and I did a few chapters. I know where it's going. I did the ending. And then I put it away because life got too busy, what with editing the first one, because it turns out that when you pass your manuscript into your agent, she gets a crack at it. She or he gets a crack at editing, and then she takes it to the publisher and they get a crack at editing. And it's like a lot of work after you've thought you'd finished it. Wow. So in answer to your question, I write or do something writerly every day.
That sounds fun.
I liked it, yeah.
Now, Carol wants to know, did you belong to a writer's group to explore ideas, comment on one another's work, and establish a bond? What was your experience with publication? So that's two questions, I guess. So I guess the first part is whether you were part of some group where you could explore ideas. No, okay.
I was in a writer's group about 5 years ago, and I lasted about a year or maybe, but I enjoyed the women and I enjoyed reading their writing, but it wasn't what I wanted to be doing, actually. I would sooner join a book group and delve into detail in one book rather than have a writing group. I may change my mind. I don't know.
Yes. And you touched upon...
I'm not a very groupie person, not much of a joiner, I should say.
Independent artist.
Okay, I'll go with that.
So, and related to that, you just touched upon it. Carol wanted to know what your experience with publication has been like. I guess the publication process.
With as far as the novel is concerned, or the other things? Just the novel, I guess.
Well, let's start with the novel. And Carol, if you have any other comments or want to add to your question, feel free.
The novel, the hardest part was getting an agent. I couldn't believe it. And I thought some of it had to do with my age, maybe. But then I realized that it didn't, because I was hiding my age. I wasn't admitting how old I was to anybody. And when I had to talk on the phone to people, and they would ask me questions about my family and what we were doing, and I didn't really want to talk much about it because my family includes a bunch of grandchildren, and that would give away my So I hid my age until my agent found a publisher, and the publisher said, I talked to the publisher on the phone, and she said, so send me a photo. And this is before I signed the contract. And I thought, oh no, I've come this far. Are they going to really sign a hag?
Oh, no.
And then I cried myself to sleep, but it didn't seem to matter to them. My agent and publisher are wonderful. And I've heard of ageism in publishing. When I tried to get an agent in Canada, I was told that they wouldn't take anybody under the age of 40 for a first, over the age of 40 for a first novel.
Wow. That's crazy.
So discrimination exists, but I was very lucky. It did take a long while to get an agent. It can, I hear, take a lot of people a long time to get an agent. But I wasn't giving up. I mean, I just kept at it and at it and at it. And my writing that whole year was, "Dear agent, would you like to look at my manuscript?" And then, "No, dear next agent." That was my writing. After that, the publishing, my agent found a publisher maybe within the month, and that was wonderful.
Wow.
And then, of
So,
course, there's the editing that I
yeah.
mentioned before, all the edits that you do with the various people. And one thing I found out is you don't get to title your own book. That was weird. I thought that was funny. My book had been called The Children's Corner, but that was taken from me. And they liked the one, my publisher liked the ones they keep. And they gave out that one. There was a vote and a committee meeting and everything. And I think they were absolutely right. The ones we keep is much better. Although I do plan on writing The Children's Corner one day.
Now you have a title without a book.
Right.
So we have some more questions. What was your favorite part about the publishing process and cycle? And that's from Andrew.
The publishing process and
Cycle.
cycle. The publishing cycle.
Yes.
My favorite part, well, just the elation of the fact that somebody was going to actually publish me. A book that I wrote, somebody was going to actually make it into a, look, this is a miracle to me. I've wanted it since I was a child. I wrote a novel when I was 9. It was 2 pages. Never got published though.
Oh.
No, the publishing process was, it was just so thrilling that somebody actually liked it.
Now, you mentioned that you didn't get to choose your own title. Susan has a question. How much did your original writing change during the process of other people editing it?
So I better say that again, Kim. Sorry.
Yes.
I didn't hear that
So
last bit.
So in the process of people editing your writing, how much did your writing change?
A lot of people ask about editors, and I think a lot of people think that editors actually change what you write. And actually, editors, at least the ones I've worked with, have never changed a word. They suggest, they say things like, "Can you bring out the character's background a little bit more so we can understand the choice that she made?" Or did this character have trauma in her life? We need an explanation for this. We need a little more tension in this kind of thing. So it didn't really change my style. My style is my style, and not a word got changed. So it's still all me.
Oh, that's wonderful.
A lot of improvements for my wonderful editors.
So it was like they were just giving you more work to push you to be better.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is fun.
Yeah.
If anyone else has any other questions for Bobbie Jean, feel free to type them in either to the Q&A or into the chat window.
Can I just say something really quickly? I noticed that Andrew Lipstein is one of the guys here because I saw his little message. He's just written this wonderful book. I'm half the way through it. It's called Last Resort. Tremendous read by it. That's all. Okay. Now back to me.
Now, before you wrote, you have been a musician as well. And I think that shows in this book. Now, how did you take your experience as a musician and put it into The Ones We Keep? What was that like? Well,
I started playing piano when I was 5. And I got very serious eventually. And then I cut my hand. I cut the tendons in my hand. I had intended on a concert career. And that wasn't able to happen. But I kept playing and I kept playing. And then when I wrote, I didn't play so much. But I started with poems and things when I lived in Canada. I taught myself to play the organ, though. And I did church organ for quite a while. The last 10 years we lived in Canada. And then when I got really serious about writing the novel, I kind of dropped the music. It feels to me as if I'm not able to practice one art form at a time, which is too bad. And maybe if I stop being able to write, I'll go back to the piano. Probably
Wow.
not the organ though, because I don't think I would, I just don't think I could do that anymore. That's tough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The music, of course,
Yeah.
the music that I played, all the music that is in the book was music that I played, and in the sequel as well. Right?
Oh, I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
And did at any point you think you should choose a song that you hadn't played, or how did you,
I'm sorry, I didn't
how,
hear that one.
yes, how did you choose the songs? Was there any point where you thought of
Oh,
choosing
well, they
songs
were
you
the ones
hadn't
that were
played?
my favorites. They were my
Oh,
favorites.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So in my sequel, Chloe, who is the little girl at the end of the novel, she is a musician and going to be a musician. So I'll be able to keep, my vent my music through Chloe, and without having to play the piano myself.
Yes.
It just works over here in my corner.
Yes. Yes. And what do you think is one of the most important things that you hope that the reader takes away from your book?
Oh boy. Well, I want them to really like it, of course. And I want them to be surprised, because I don't think anybody thought I could ever do anything like that. Why would they? I had never done it before, and I've reached this age where I couldn't. So
Yes.
I'd like people to admire me. Yeah. Please admire me. I did something I didn't think I'd do or be
Yeah.
able to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joyce wanted to ask you, she mentioned that you started to talk about your research, and she was hoping that you could continue along those lines. I think at one point I read your acknowledgments, and you had mentioned the Pennington police, for
Yeah.
example, which I thought was so cool
Yeah.
because they were in the same building as the library.
They're
And
right. Right. They were great.
yes,
I had to go in.
yes.
I had to find out from the Pennington police whether back in 1973, if a person went missing and they found that person, and that person said, please don't tell my family where I am, would they tell the family, or would they be obliged to keep it a secret? And I
Huh.
found out that back then, I don't know about now, they were obliged to keep it a secret. So
Wow.
yeah,
Don't give
it had to
anyone
be
any
right.
ideas.
Details, they have to get exactly right, or people are going to say, did you know that?
Yes, yes.
So that was fun. The Metropolitan Museum of Art was also I didn't go in myself. Actually, I was COVID by then, so I wasn't going into New York. But emailing people about whether they could keep, people who not donate, who sold them paintings, could they keep it a secret? And it turned out, yes, they could keep, and were compelled to keep it a secret if they were told to. If you go
Oh,
into the Metropolitan Museum and say, I'm donating this, or I'm giving you this, or I'm selling you this, I don't want anybody to know it was for me, they're obliged to keep it a secret.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so that's great. And let's see, I use a psychiatrist who told me about PTSD and trauma and how it can affect people's behavior and later in life, which was useful for my main character, Olivia, who was pretty traumatized. It was fun doing the research. And of course, I love Googling this and that. And yeah, it's light. It feels lighter than making up stuff.
Yes.
Right. Finding out stuff on Google is fun.
I can imagine that you can go down a rabbit hole too with it.
You can. All of a sudden, you're looking for something on your character, and you're finding out what series you're watching tonight, right?
So Carol wanted to thank you for your comments. She mentions that she was very interested in the age bracket issue. She wants to know what you think makes a good story, and if you could describe your writing space.
My writing space, I'm writing it now. It's bookcases all over the place, and paintings, and I have a big table instead of a desk, and it's very light, and I spend hours and hours in it every day. What was the first part of the question she asked?
Oh, she was wondering what makes a good story in your opinion.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. Although I know it when I see it or when I think it. You know?
That's a very popular comment, isn't it? Like, I don't know, but I know it when I see it.
If Carol could be around when I'm looking at it.
Yes, and I love your space. It looks great as a Zoom backdrop.
Good, good.
Light and
great.
So Story has a question. She says, feel free not to answer if you think this is too personal, but do you think you would have made the same choice Olivia made if you were in her position?
Gee, well, when I went to the lodge and looked at the lake, I thought I might. I think I might make it to the bus station, but I think I'd probably come back. A lot of people had a hard time with Olivia's choice of leaving her family. I understand that. A lot of people. But and a lot of people said, you know, I couldn't buy the book because of that. But I was writing about a very damaged person. And, well, I'm trying to think of the main character of The Silence of the Lambs. He did a lot of bad things and people were still interested in reading about him.
Oh, Hannibal Lecter.
Right. That character wasn't as bad as Hannibal Lecter. So, yeah, there was quite a bit of criticism. There has been about that. But that's what I intended to write about, this damaged person who did such a thing that I wouldn't do, that Story wouldn't do. She's my niece, by the way. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you made the comparison with Hannibal Lecter. I think that there are very strong opinions about motherhood. It seems to be a very hot topic. Like whenever we've had a book discussion at the library and there are mothers involved that are characters,
yes,
there seems to be a lot of debate on whether that character was the type of mother that a person would want to be, or, you know, usually it's a very hot topic.
There was a thing in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago about bad mothers. I thought, oh my goodness, when they read this, they'll never read my book. But I forget who the person was who wrote it, but she said, deadbeat dads could go off. And people would think, oh, he was a deadbeat dad. But if a mother went off, that's like the worst thing could ever happen. So it's just a difference in perception.
Yeah. Now, you had some other mother figures mentioned in your book. In addition to Olivia, you have also Tony.
Yes.
You have Olivia's mother. What was that like writing those characters?
I based them, I'm just thinking now of your earlier question, have I based people on real people? And none of my main characters did I, but Tony I actually did. And Olivia's mother, I actually did. Not completely. They're not as well-rounded characters and they don't appear as much in the book. Tony serves a purpose of being someone that the younger brother can bond with because he wasn't as damaged as his older brother because he was younger when his brother died. So yeah, they were based on real people.
That's interesting.
I won't tell you who the real people were though. I don't want to get in trouble.
All right, so we have Carol has another question. If you had to describe yourself as an author in 3 words, what would they be?
Oh, gee. Proud, happy, ecstatic. There we go, 3. I'm so thrilled to be doing this. I'm so thrilled that I can do it. And I'm so thrilled that people think that I can do it. That's it. Thrilled and ecstatic.
Yes. Yes, it's such a shame that people feel that they are no longer accepted if they reach a certain age, because I feel like you get wiser with every year. So that's very interesting.
Not only that, I never went to university. I went to university, but for 2 years, I never finished. And I always felt kind of like not quite right because I didn't. my husband went to graduate school. Everybody that I know, my friends all finished university and I never did. And it sure is nice to write a book and get published, even if it's later in life, to sort of say, look, I'm not so stupid after all.
Well, you finished now your third book, right? You said you just finished a third one.
And about to start on the sequel.
About to start on the sequel. So
do
you have any other book ideas?
No, I think I'm going to be done then. I think I'll be done after the sequel. I mean, I'm 76, say I'll be 78 after the sequel, and then there's the editing process if I'm around. I could go back to poetry. It's a long thing. It's a big thing to write a novel. It takes a lot out of you, to do it day after day after day. And I look at my favorite novelists. I go on their wiki pages, and I notice that they haven't written novels, after the age of 75, say. Margaret Drabble, is she going to write a novel again? I don't think so. She said she's not. All of my favorite novelists seem like they quit when they're in their 70s. I have no reason to believe I wouldn't follow the same pattern. Aww. So it'll be back to poetry for me. If I still am in my right mind.
Oh. What would your advice be to aspiring writers?
Gee, I guess it depends on their situation. If they can, I've read of a lot of writers who come home at night from work and then they stay up late or they get up early. Boy, I don't think I could have done that when I was in my working days. But that sounds kind of discouraging, doesn't it? I guess it depends on the writer, how much they want it and how much they realize how big a deal it is to do it, how much work is in it, but how much fun it is too. Yeah. So what I would say to an aspiring writer is, how much are you aspiring, right? Do you really, really, really want to do it so much that you would hate not doing it? Then go do it. Yeah, do it.
Well, thank you, Bobbie.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other questions for Bobbie Jean? It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. It's been great speaking with you and all your invisible people there.
Yes, we have 25 people here.
Well,
some of them have commented too in the chat window. So if anyone else has any additional comments, feel free to post them so that Bobbie Jean can see them. A lot of people saying they're very proud of you, Joni. So she's very proud of you. Susan has one last question. She asked if the pandemic had an effect on your writing or the publishing process.
Probably on my writing, because I'm not dashing off to have lunch with people so often. So I'm getting more done. I'm getting more done during the pandemic.
That's interesting that way, isn't it?
Yeah.
The gives and the takes. Gila commented, it was also interesting, and I appreciate the opportunity to hear what you have to say. And Bobbie Jean, you mentioned that there's a way for those who haven't read your book yet to get themselves a copy. Besides coming to the library, you could also purchase a copy, right?
My website is bobbiejeanhuff.com, and it gives you all kinds of ways of buying a copy, having it sent. Or go into your indie bookstore. A lot of people are doing it that way, wherever you are. Yeah. Yes. I was surprised when I check around and see it's also in the library, various libraries. I'm amazed at where it is. Like, it's not hard to find. But anyway, bobbiejeanhuff.com. Click on it and you're there.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's so great spending this evening with you and everyone here. I just wanted to give a quick plug for next week's program. We are actually having, for the first time, a virtual cooking class next week. Wow. It's a chili night. And I have to admit, I am not running the class. So that is good. We are having an actual chef running the class. And not only will we be making chili, it's a vegetable chili, but also non-alcoholic tea sangria. Just sounds delicious. And it will be February 10th at 7 p.m. And if you're interested, please go to penningtonlibrary.org and sign up. We will give you an ingredient list, and then also closer to the actual time, the actual recipe, so you can cook with us. So that's pretty exciting.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
I know. And it's kind of perfect for a winter, indoor winter
absolutely.
activity, I think. So,
Right.
All right. Well, good night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you so much for profiling me. This has been great.
Yes, of course.
And thank you all for coming.
Yes.
Coming,
Until the next time on Zoom.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.